Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Eric Voss, and this is a breakdown of 2011's Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2, the 8th and final entry in our weekly Harry Potter Rewatch series. And you better be ready to cry, because this one racks up the highest body count, and we found dozens of more details that'll make you cry even harder. But hey, a reminder that New Rockstars now has a channel membership option for those of you able and willing to support our hard work here, and we have a special announcement about that at the end of this video. Okay, this film opens by replaying the final scene of Deathly Hallows Part 1, Voldemort grave robbing Dumbledore's White Tomb on the Island of Trees to retrieve the Elder Wand, the most powerful wand in the world. Voldemort attaining what he thinks is the greatest achievement of his life through treachery and grave robbing on an island all alone tells us a lot about how this asshole's gonna die. Cut off from everyone else, arrogant, but ultimately alone. The Warner Brothers logo of this final film brightens somewhat like a headstone, as this film teaches us that in death can still be victory. Instead of Hedwig's theme, we hear this woman's vocalization. Now that Hedwig has fallen, composer Alexandre Desplat gives us Lily's theme, sung here by Mai Fujisawa, daughter of Japanese composer Joe Hisaishi. We hear orchestral versions of this song at key moments throughout this film, notably in the adaptation of the heartbreaking Chapter 34, The Forest Again, when Lily's spectral form returns to comfort her baby boy. So this film really opens with the lullaby Harry will need to hear to strengthen himself in order to face death. We see Dementors hovering around Hogwarts, the fog they use to breed, blanketing this hallowed ground in fear and uncertainty, draining any joy from the once happy place. Specifically, they are staring at the Viaduct Bridge, an architectural detail that does not appear in the books, but was added to the structure in Goblet of Fire for the Hungarian horntail dragon to fly under, and is emphasized here because it is the dueling ground where Harry and Voldemort will have their final shots. Severus Snape watches over the students being marched in like prisoners of war by Death Eaters like Amicus and Electo Harrow. Geographically, coming in from the bridge like this would mean that they would be coming from the Forbidden Forest, a place that they think would be tortuous for these students, but actually, when Snape sends Luna, Neville, and Ginny out there, it actually does them a favor. But Snape here is standing on a ledge that looks, dare I say, like one ready to end things. Director David Yates wanted to open with Snape because he is the primary figure of this film. Harry sits by the grave he physically dug for Dobby the elf, a grave marked "Here lies Dobby, a free elf," and he looks into the shard of the two-way mirror that Sirius gifted him in the book, still hoping to see Dumbledore. And for a brief flash, we see a face that could be that of Albus, but no, we will learn later, it is Albus's brother Aberforth. They're at Shell Cottage, the home of Bill Weasley and his newlywed wife, Fleur Delacour, and this place is protected by the Fidelius charm. Harry goes in to talk to Griphook the goblin. On the windowsill are 4 shells, reminding us of the 7 rocks on the windowsill of Tom Riddle's orphanage bedroom. Those 7 rocks represented the 7 future Horcruxes Tom would eventually form, and now there are only 4 of those remaining: Hufflepuff's cup, Ravenclaw's diadem, Nagini, and Harry himself. Griphook notes,
"You buried the elf."
Yes.
"It brought me here."
Griphook is recognizing that Harry cares about other species that the Death Eaters are trying to normalize the inferiority of, like elves and goblins. Warwick Davis plays Griphook now. After Vern Troyer did the physical performance in the first film and Davis only did the voice, we are reminded of that Gringotts moment in this scene and how darkly protective the goblins can be. The Part 1 film adapted well over the first half of the Deathly Hallows book, really to leave this final film to mostly just focus on the Battle of Hogwarts, but it also leaves room for great little moments like this.
"How did you come by this sword?"
It's complicated. Why did Bellatrix Lestrange think it should be in her vault at Gringotts?
"It's complicated."
David Yates saw this scene as a poker game, with Harry and Griphook each trying to size each other up and trying to get the better end of the deal. The deal they eventually reach, Harry knows from Bellatrix's meltdown over her vault being compromised that a Horcrux must be in there, and promises Griphook Gryffindor's sword for helping him break in, which is a risk because it's one weapon they know can destroy Horcruxes and a goblin-forged artifact that Griphook believes should revert back to him due to goblin custom, but they know that a Gryffindor sword will appear to any worthy Gryffindor in moments of need, so it's kind of a tricky move that Harry and Hermione feel uneasy about in the book. Now, in the book, Harry does intend to be true to his word and give Griphook the sword of Gryffindor, but only after he's destroyed all the Horcruxes. He leaves that bit out of the deal here. A deleted scene shows Bill Weasley, who has worked with the goblins for years as a Gringotts curse breaker in Egypt, warning Harry about this.
"I know goblins. If you've struck any kind of bargain with Griphook, you must be exceptionally careful to live up to it. If you don't, he won't be forgiving."
So next they talk to Ollivander, and John Hurt returns to feast in this scene. He identifies Bellatrix's wand, Walnut, Dragon Heartstring, and
Unyielding.
The wood's firmness reflects Bellatrix's die-hard fanaticism, and Ollivander's little gasp on the word unyielding is just likely this old man recalling giving the young Lestrange girl decades in the past this wand from his shop, not realizing how much pain it would bring him and the world. By comparison, he describes Draco's wand this way.
Reasonably pliant.
Pliant. Another sign that Draco can still change the path that he's on. Ollivander calls back what he told him when they first met.
The wand chooses the wizard, Mr. Potter.
The wand chooses the wizard, Mr. Potter.
Ollivander senses Draco's wand now no longer responds to Draco, but rather to Harry, who, we saw in the last film, wrestled it out of Draco's hand in Malfoy Manor. And that's a very important detail established here, because it tells Harry that since Dumbledore had the Elder Wand in his possession, and since Harry alone witnessed Draco Expelliarmus it out of Dumbledore's hand on the Astronomy Tower, that there might be some chance this Elder Wand could respond to Harry now. Like, the wand lore logic underscores why Harry in this moment seems to have so much urgency and just a bit of confidence. Like, while Ollivander downplays his chances and Harry must be terrified, he feels like he has no opportunity to feel fear right now. There is a long shot that some crazy laws of succession with wands could play in his favor, but it's an experiment that he won't know actually worked until at the end of the duel. Ollivander, as a wand obsessive, considers all of wizard life to begin and end at the tip of a wand, and doesn't appreciate as much other forms of death-centered magic, like Horcruxes. Like Slughorn, embarrassed to admit he told Tom Riddle about that path to immortality, Ollivander feels a similar shame for handing this knowledge over to Voldemort. And the older generation always assumes their messes are too big for the younger generation to clean up, right? Hermione holds up the single hair from the head of Bellatrix Lestrange that drifted down before her eyes in that scene in the Part 1 film, and when she says positive, it's a kind of grim certainty that she feels from the lingering pain of Bellatrix's torture. We humorously cut directly post-Polyjuice to Helena Bonham Carter beside them on the dune, doing an amazing sulky Emma Watson. Helena is so good in this part of the film, specifically leading with her chin and this subtle little underbite, like a gesture that I'm sure even Emma Watson wasn't aware of, so that at times when you watch this, Helena Bonham Carter looks like Emma Watson in Bellatrix cosplay.
She's much more introverted than Bellatrix, but there's a lot of worry going on, you know. And then she does this thing with, she does sometimes use her chin. That's my one extra, you know, she does, yeah. It's like that.
Meanwhile, Ron's disguise is weak, but in chapter 26, Hermione does just kind of change some features about Ron's appearance, like giving him different hair and beard. In this shot of Griphook putting the sword in Hermione's extension charmed bag, they do a Mary Poppins handbag magic illusion there, but if you look at the shadow in the sand at his feet, there is never a shadow for the sword, so they probably just had Warwick Davis pantomime with empty hands and then CGI'd in the sword after the fact. They apparate to Nocturne Alley, and Bellatrix Hermione steps forward. You can hear some birds tweeting. I wonder if this is a bird that didn't die that flew back and forth between Borgin and Burke and the Room of Requirement. The Death Eater who greets Bellatrix is the bald one who sat next to Draco at the Malfoy Manor scene in Part 1.
Madame Lestrange.
Good morning.
This is Hermione's fourth time with Polyjuice. The first time, she turned into a cat. The second time, she became a decoy Harry. And for the third, she was Mafalda Hopkirk. Griphook warns that if they're caught,
We might as well use that sword to slit our own throats.
this will be how Neville destroys a Horcrux later, and since Harry is a Horcrux himself, it's something to consider. They walk into Gringotts, Helena working in some great heel wobbling in these boots. In the shot of her feet behind her, you can just barely see the invisibility cloak with Harry and Griphook underneath it, brushing the floor. The downward angled shots of this scene just boost the paranoia we feel, as we just sense all the eyes of the suspecting goblins glaring down at us. And for once, it makes the face of Bellatrix Lestrange in these films look like low status. Griphook whispers, "They know, they've been warned." And a goblin asks to see Bellatrix's wand. The book gives more context here. As soon as the trio escaped Malfoy Manor with Bellatrix's wand, Voldemort and Bellatrix warned Gringotts that if some version of Bellatrix shows up to that bank with her wand, it would not be the real her. So the fact that Hermione stalls on handing over Bellatrix's wand is what saves them, because it's just long enough for Harry to hit Bogrod with Imperio. So Imperio, when we saw it used on the Arachnid and Fake Moody's class in the Goblet of Fire film, was a blast of light. Here, it's kind of like a fart mist that Bogrod loves sniffing. It's very creepy, but think about it. Visually, it's pretty appropriate for the Imperious Curse that it work as a kind of intoxicating opiate. Now, one thing that Hermione and the others were unable to duplicate about Bellatrix's appearance, her bird skull necklace that we saw in the previous films. You'll also notice that there are more goblins in Gringotts than in the first film. These actors were all cast from Warwick Davis's company, Willow Management, which specializes in representing short actors in the UK. They zip down down the minecart, which production designer Stuart Craig placed on a motion base that allowed it to move in rotation and up and down. Craig had just come back from helping the Universal Orlando Park's Harry Potter designs when he thought up this sequence and how it should look, so yeah, he was definitely influenced by that and made this whole thing feel like a roller coaster ride. They pass through the Thief's Downfall, which is a waterfall that washes away magical effects, which in this case includes a Polyjuice potion, Ron's Dew, and Imperio on Bogrod. It does not, however, affect Harry's invisibility cloak in the book, though it is a Deathly Hallow. Nothing can hurt it. Nor does it affect Hermione's extension charm on her handbag, but she did note in part 1 that that charm was undetectable. Whereas the cart fully derails in the book, here it emits an alarm and dumps them out like bad luggage at the TSA. Hermione stops their fall with Arresto Momentum, which Dumbledore used in Prisoner of Azkaban when Harry dropped on top of the Quidditch pitch. They find a Ukrainian Iron Belly, a dragon variety Ron likely recognizes because his brother Charlie works with dragons. Philosopher's Stone mentioned the rumor that dragons guard some of the more important vaults under Gringotts, and now this pays that off. The designers include the details of bloody abrasions around the chains, also making this dragon partially blind. You can see its cataracted eyes and scars, both old and new, all over its emaciated body, all of which Hermione clocks in her empathy for the creature to later mount it to escape. So we got here through a Temple of Doom style minecart. Now we're in a Last Crusade type task of picking the correct chalice. In the book, Harry recognizes the Horcrux from the pensieve memory in the Half-Blood Prince book of Hokey the House Elf and Hepzibah Smith. Here, Harry just senses it from it emitting the same high-pitched screech and Parseltongue as the locket did. Actually, the film doesn't even mention Helga Hufflepuff in relation to this cup, but the designers did include an engraving of a Hufflepuff badger on the cup. Now, the treasures in the Lestrange vault are protected by the Gemino Curse, which duplicates every item. We think Hermione might have placed this same thing on the decoy detonators in the Ministry. In the book, they also have the Flagrante Curse, which makes the treasures scalding hot to the touch, but that's not the case here in the movie. Griphook double crosses them, and once he has a sword, sells them out as thieves. Bogrod gets fire blasted. Now, the VFX team for the dragon displayed the flame with pairs of chemicals that were sprayed from the dragon's mouth that then ignited, borrowing the general fire-breathing anatomy from dragons in movies like Reign of Fire, and then later used in Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon. Hermione uses Reducto to blast the guardrail, and then mounts the dragon, followed by the other two, and on the dragon's chains, Hermione uses Relatio, which releases restraints or grips. This spell had been used a number of times in the books, but this is the first time we hear it in the films. It's not to be confused with Expelliarmus, which is specifically to disarm wands or weapons. The wizard cops on the cart fire some green, I'm assuming, killing curses on them, but the Ukrainian Iron Belly claws the tracks, setting that cart flying. The dragon smashes up through the bank lobby and through the glass dome. When Gringotts was added to the Universal Parks in 2014, the dragon perched atop it was made part of the architecture. Hermione has to fire another Reducto at the masonry to scare the dragon into flying. And I love how this Iron Belly takes a moment to adjust its nearly blind eyes to the daylight, and it's so worn down that it kind of needs a few clumsy flaps as it smashes through the chimneys and roofs of Diagon Alley. Luckily, they seem to be on the opposite side of the street from where Weasley's Wizarding Wheezes would be, though based on the street's layout, it did wreck Madame Malkin's and Flourish and Blots. So they drop down from the dragon into a lake, and Harry's mind connects with Voldemort. We see Voldemort Avada Kedavering a guard, Dumbledore placing on the gaunt ring and gets cursed by it, Voldemort killing more guards, Dumbledore picking up the destroyed diary, that's a shot from Half-Blood Prince, Harry picking up Regulus's locket in the cave in Half-Blood Prince, Ron smashing the locket in Deathly Hallows Part 1, young Tom Riddle's spectral form being destroyed in Chamber of Secrets when Harry stabbed the diary, a shot of Hogwarts, and then the shot of Helena Ravenclaw, aka the Grey Lady, the ghost of Ravenclaw, played in this movie by Kelly MacDonald. Then the Ravenclaw house crest, and then Harry snagging Hufflepuff's cup with a badger engraved, and then Voldemort killing more guards and goblins, and then slowly taking in that his precious Horcruxes are being targeted. So Voldemort knows for sure now. Now in the book, he can't really figure out how they knew, and Harry senses Voldemort checking each of the places he had hidden the other Horcruxes. He originally hid the Gaunt Ring under the wreckage of Marvelo's house, that's gone, and then he checks the cave for the locket, that's gone too. After each discovery, Harry feels Voldemort's instability and rage intensify. When they come out of the lake, the stuff that Hermione puts on their hands is actually essence of Dittany. This is what she used on Ron's shoulder when he was splinched. This was supposed to be from the burns they received from the Flagrante curse on the treasure, but since the movie removed the Flagrante part of it, I suppose the Dittany is supposed to heal their blisters from gripping those dragon horns. As they change clothes, Harry says he knows the next Horcrux must be at Hogwarts.
One of them's at Hogwarts.
What? You saw it?
I saw the castle and Rowena Ravenclaw. It must have something to do with her.
It's odd that Harry says he saw Rowena when he actually saw her daughter Helena. But Harry's a Gryffindor, and Gryffindors are just so full of themselves that they don't really think about the other houses that much. Ravenclaw specifically is probably the one he knows the least about, so he's probably just like, Rowena, Helena, I don't know, talk to Cho. But it's easy to forget when you watch these films that had you not read the books, it would not at all be clear what each of the relics that formed the Horcruxes were, who they belonged to originally, or how Tom Riddle acquired them, and who he killed to form the Horcruxes. We do break all this down in our Half-Blood Prince breakdown. Like at some point, David Yates and Steve Kloves just made these films for readers of the books who knew all the details already, and for any other viewers, they just didn't want to bog things down with the history. But it's a shame. Horcruxes are far more interesting pieces of lore than Deathly Hallows, in my opinion, and visually, Deathly Hallows Part 1 gives us a far more interesting display of what the Hallows are than any film ever gave us of the Horcruxes, and really it's just because the Half-Blood Prince film cut too many of the pensive memory scenes. At Malfoy Manor, all the Gringotts staff are dead, covering the Malfoy's floor with blood. But since Voldemort had used Avada Kedavra, the blood must have come from Nagini's strikes. They made Ralph Fiennes barefoot for this scene, which is just really gross with all the blood everywhere, but I just think it helps make the blood show up more viscerally on his foot skin. Griphook lies among the bodies, and Gryffindor's sword vanishes from his hand. They included this insert to set up how Neville will be able to draw it later in the film, but it's kind of odd to me that neither Voldemort nor the Malfoys nor Bellatrix would have taken it from him before letting Nagini strike him dead. But we should note that this sword also would have been something that could have killed Nagini, though Voldemort wouldn't have known it at that point. The trio apparates into Hogsmeade. On the walls are flyers reading Undesirable Number 1 Harry Potter, the flyers that we saw at the Ministry in Part 1. They set off this alarm. This is a caterwauling charm, but they're invited into the Hogshead to hide by Aberforth Dumbledore. In the book, Harry also has to repel Dementors with a stag Patronus, and Aberforth has to convince the Death Eaters that he set off the alarm and cast a Patronus, but his Patronus is, of course, a goat. Aberforth was with a goat when we saw him in the Order of the Phoenix film. Now he's played by Kieran Hines, who plays Mance Rayder in Game of Thrones and a number of other roles. Hines was given makeup and prosthetics to make him more closely resemble Michael Gambon, specifically a prosthetic nose and bags under his eyes, so that Harry might realistically think the eyes he had been seeing in the mirror shard was Albus Dumbledore's. But Harry realizes that this shard has been showing him Aberforth, not Albus. In the books, Sirius had given Harry this two-way mirror during Order of the Phoenix, but Harry didn't think to use it to check in with Sirius after seeing the vision of Sirius being tortured at the Ministry, and Harry later smashed this mirror in his trunk. But during the events of the Half-Blood Prince book, Harry caught Mundungus Fletcher selling some of Sirius's possessions in Hogsmeade, and it's explained in the Deathly Hallows book that included the rest of Sirius's mirror that he sold to Aberforth. This scene kind of quickly addresses all of this.
Who gave that to you? The mirror.
Mundungus Fletcher, about a year ago.
Dunn had no right selling that to you. It belongs...
Serious.
We learn that it was Aberforth who sent Dobby, and that Aberforth is bitter toward his brother Albus for keeping his family secret, including his and Ariana's existences. Harry responds,
I'm not interested in what happened between you and your brother.
This movie isn't interested, but the book very much was interested. So Aberforth in the book explains how their little sister Ariana was too young to control her magic, and then 3 Muggle boys caught her and hurt her, and her magic turned inward and would burst out without control. Actually, Fantastic Beasts and the Secrets of Dumbledore confirmed that Ariana was what's called an obscurial, like Aberforth's son, Albus's nephew, Aurelius Dumbledore, aka Credence Barebone. But we're not talking about the Fantastic Beasts movies here. The family's father, Percival Dumbledore, killed those 3 Muggle boys and went to Azkaban for it. Years later, the mother, Kendra, died from one of Ariana's outbursts, leading Albus to have to return home from Hogwarts to Godric's Hollow. There, he met the dashing young Gellert Grindelwald, and when the two started to plot to control Muggles for the greater good, Aberforth confronted them on it, and there was a 3-way fight in which one of their spells hit Ariana and killed her. Harry simply tells Aberforth,
I trusted the man I knew.
I read this as Harry forgiving a father. These latter stories have confronted Harry with the uncomfortable truths about the kind of people Albus Dumbledore and James Potter and Sirius Black really were in their youths. We all have a choice of forever judging our forebearers, our fathers, our mentors for not being saints, or just forgiving their sins and moving on, and instead focusing on the gifts they bestowed to us. It harkens back to Dumbledore telling Harry in Chamber of Secrets, it is our choices, Harry, that show what we truly are. Aberforth tells Ariana in the painting, you know what to do, and she nods with a bit of a smile as if to say, I've been waiting for you to forgive our brother all this time. Also, stop making me watch what you do with those goats. Ariana brings back Neville Longbottom, who is a complete badass in this movie. He's been getting roughed up by the Carrows. As the Hogwarts resistance leader, Neville wears a cardigan, and Harry wore cardigans when he taught Dumbledore's army, inspired by Lupin's cardigans as their defense against the dark arts teacher. For a while, the one thing that kept the Carrows from killing Neville was the fact that he's a pureblood, but eventually they decided decided to do him in, and at that point, he hid in the room of requirement, specifically asking, "Give me a place where I can hide from the Carrows." Over time, the room took in more and more students on the run, and it conjures supplies for all of them to camp out and puts up banners for each house as more students arrive. Though Slytherin is never represented because in Rowling's universe, 1 out of every 4 wizard kids are either evil or wizard Nazi sympathizers. But they realize that as long as one of them stays in the room, it can always stay, and it's like fun camp out, where you know some kids are hooking up in the corner. Neville explains that the other 7 passages out of Hogwarts were sealed. Snape knew about the Whomping Willow to Shrieking Shack passage from Prisoner of Azkaban, but the room of requirement has procured a new exit from the castle, which I just think is so interesting. And the moment Harry re-enters Hogwarts, we finally hear Hedwig's theme once more.
Flying.
There's a lot of familiar faces in the room. On the left is a huddle with Lavender Brown, Ron's ex, Leanne, that's Katie Bell's friend from Half-Blood Prince, Romilda Vane, Katie Bell, who actually should have graduated the previous year, but they do bring her back here, and Padma Patil. Now, Parvati Patil does not appear in Deathly Hallows Part 2. The Patil twin that we see in this movie is always Padma. In the center is Seamus Finnegan and Cormac McLagan, and Dean Thomas to the side. Now, in the book, Dean is not at Hogwarts yet, since as a Muggleborn, he was on the run with Ted Tonks and Dirk Cresswell, my beloved trio that I cannot shut up about. But despite being without wand, Dean returns with the order to fight. Harry hugs Padma, and then Lavender, and then Cho Chang. Neville tells Nigel Wolpert, remember the standout kid from Goblet of Fire and Order of the Phoenix, to radio out to the Order that Harry is back.
River, DA calling. Do you read? We have a new weather report. Lightning has struck.
River is Lee Jordan's alias as a host of Potter Watch, a reference to the River Lee in Ireland and the River Jordan in Israel. Lightning has struck recalls the lightning struck tower of the Tower Tarot card that Trelawney warned Harry about in the Half-Blood Prince book, and the chapter title in which Dumbledore died in the Astronomy Tower. On the desk next to the radio is Neville's Mimblelus Mimbletonia that he had in Order of the Phoenix. He loves this plant. In the Half-Blood Prince book, the Gryffindor common room password becomes Mimblelus Mimbletonia, and Neville was thrilled. Now, the book lists other former Dumbledore's army members present: Terry Boot, Ernie Macmillan, Anthony Goldstein, and Michael Corner. And in this shot of the group, in the middle are 3 Ravenclaws, Luna Lovegood, Cho Chang, and the short girl is Maisie Reynolds, who's later the Screaming Girl when Voldemort speaks to the castle. Harry asks them about a possible Ravenclaw-related Horcrux, and Luna is the right conspiracy theorist for the job.
Well, there's Rowena Ravenclaw's lost diadem.
In Deathly Hallows Part 1, we saw Luna and her dad's replica bust of Rowena Ravenclaw in their house with a diadem made of dirigible plums. In the book, Cho offers to take Harry up to Ravenclaw Tower under the invisibility cloak to take a look at the bust of Rowena, and Ginny Weasley is like, no, Luna will take Harry. Cho says this of the diadem, though.
For centuries now, there isn't a person alive today who's seen it.
In the book, the search for the diadem is a more chaotic scramble amidst Harry running around Hogwarts, helping McGonagall deal with the Carrows, and asking Flitwick, who's head of Ravenclaw, who says, quote, nobody has seen it in living memory, which later leads Harry to conclude to ask Nearly Headless Nick, a ghost, who points them to the Grey Lady. But here in the Room of Requirement, Ginny appears.
Harry.
Hi there.
In the book, Harry is somewhat happy to see Ginny, but only so much because he feels like they're all about to die in the battle and he doesn't want her to be here. Among the omitted book details from this section include Luna stunning Electo Caro after she alerts her dark mark, and McGonagall standing up to Amicus Caro, and Amicus spitting in her face, leading Harry to justifiably crucio him, and that's the moment Harry uncloaks himself. But here in the movie, Harry unveils himself in the Great Hall when Snape gathers all the students to compel them to reveal Harry.
It seems, despite your exhaustive defensive strategies, you still have a bit of a security problem, Headmaster.
It's mostly the surviving group of the Order who escorted Harry from Privet Drive to the Burrow, plus Dean, who was in the Room of Requirement and now is like joining the others. But it makes sense because as a Muggle-born, he would just have to be a full-time resident of the Room of Requirement with Neville and wouldn't be lining up in uniform with Seamus and Lavender and the others. Lupin and Tonks are there too. They had their son Teddy while Harry was on the run. Oh, poor Teddy. In the book, everyone comes back to Hogwarts to fight, including Harry's old Quidditch teammates Oliver Wood, Angelina Johnson, and Alicia Spinnet. Actually, if you look closely later in the battle in this film, you can actually see Oliver Wood making an uncredited cameo on his broomstick. It looks like he's leading those same Hogwarts Quidditch alums to provide some aerial support over the viaduct courtyard. And Percy Weasley also returns in the Room of Requirement in the book, apologizing to his family and finally reconciling. There's just like an emotional applause burst when he comes through the portal, and I wish they had it in this film. Here in the Great Hall, in the background, the house cup containers are empty. There's no fun Hogwarts traditions this year. The school has been fully transformed into a cold, indoctrinating re-education academy. Harry spits some acid at Snape.
How dare you stand where he stood?
Snape draws his wand, but maybe just to be the first to non-lethally stun Harry so that the Carrows can't do something worse to him. But McGonagall intervenes, and Snape is not prepared. Notice that Minerva attacks first, and Snape only uses defensive spells. McGonagall fires what I assume is a series of incendios, but in the book, she mixes it up by transfiguring a black serpent into smoke and then into a swarm of daggers. Also, Flitwick and Sprout and Slughorn all join McGonagall against Snape in the book, but here they give the hero moment fully to Maggie Smith. Now notice how Snape deflects 2 of Minerva's spells to take out Amicus and then Electo Carrow, doing it in such a way to make it look accidental, but actually disposing the 2 most dangerous Death Eaters in the castle right now to help everyone after he would leave. Snape is always doing nice stuff, just a little under the radar. Snape flies through the window, again, one of 2 people, along with Voldemort, who can fly without a broom in the book, as McGonagall shouts after him, "Coward!" just as she does in the book. And she uses that same incendio to ignite the torches that had been snuffed since Bellatrix extinguished them in Half-Blood Prince. The students all cheer, except the row of Slytherins, though 2 of them do hug close to the front. So, hey, I guess there are a few unfortunate good apples sorted into the evil Slytherin. Voldemort then gets in everyone's head and offers them an ultimatum: hand over Harry within an hour or die. Maisie Reynolds and Padma Patil seem particularly affected. Pansy Parkinson says, grab him! In the book, the Gryffindors, followed by the Hufflepuffs and then the Ravenclaws, all stand and turn against Slytherin House to protect Harry. Here, it's kind of like Ginny and Dumbledore's army and then the Order, while I guess the other students are like, hey, maybe Pansy's got a point. Minerva orders Filch to escort the Slytherins to the dungeons, which is where they live. Cool. But it also means the Slytherin kids would be sitting ducks, and the asshole ones could more easily flip sides and join the Death Eaters when they invaded the castle for the battle. In the book, the Slytherins are escorted out through the Hog's Head portrait, along with kids who are not of age yet, or ones who don't want to fight. And at this point, Aberforth actually tells Harry that he should have taken hostage the kids of the Death Eaters. A deleted scene would have showed Filch locking the Slytherins in the dungeons right before a huge blast takes out the dungeon wall, and all the kids run screaming. The inhabitants of the portraits go wild, visiting one another and shouting words of encouragement at passersby. The small brown dog that jumps down from a man's lap and runs from one painting to the other belonged to producer David Barron. That's Barron's lap he's sitting on. The Puritan-looking people in the painting the dog runs into are producer David Heyman and his family. McGonagall tells Neville to blow the bridge.
Why don't you confer with Mr. Finnegan? As I recall, he has a particular proclivity for pyrotechnics.
I can bring it down.
I like how Cho's like, can I come too? A deleted scene showed a delighted pyromaniac Seamus Finnegan setting the charges.
Seamus! You do know what you're doing, don't you?
In the theatrical cut, you can only see a very quick shot of them from above running down the wooden bridge as the defense dome goes up. Slughorn takes a swig of something before he joins the fight. He is a known drinker, but who knows? Maybe he's drinking a bit of Felix Felicis. He does survive this battle. McGonagall activates the castle's defenses with the spell Pier Totem Locomotor, which translates into something like, the whole position dutifully moves. The statues immediately spring to action. Flitwick, Slughorn, and Molly Weasley put up protective spells. Hermione used Protego Maxima around her campsites. Repello Inimicem is a charm to repel enemies. Fianto Duri, when used in combination with the other 2, seems to just make them so durable that it causes the shield to freaking disintegrate the Snatchers, as we see later. The digital design team wanted the protective shield around Hogwarts to be organic as it went up, and then invisible once cast. The idea was that as the Death Eaters would launch their spells, you would then be aware of its presence again as the spells started exploding on the shield. They showed a progression as the shield deteriorated so that it weakened as if fine cracks were appearing in the surface. It goes from clear and glassy to something more materialistic that is burning, and as it collapses, pieces of the burning shield fall toward the ground. Luna brings Harry to the Grey Lady, the ghost of Ravenclaw, Rowena's daughter, Helena. The book gives a lot more history to the diadem and Helena's relationship with the ghost of Slytherin House, the Bloody Baron. This diadem was enchanted to give the wearer greater intelligence, and Helena stole it from her mother and ran away with it. The mother, Rowena, fell ill and sent the Bloody Baron to go find her daughter. The Bloody Baron loved Helena despite her repeated rejections. When Helena refused to return with him, he stabbed her and then, full of remorse, stabbed himself, thus making him the Bloody Baron. And as a ghost, he wears the chains of death to atone. Helena had hidden the diadem inside of a hollow tree in Albania. Tom Riddle visited Hogwarts around 1946 to 1947 to ask then headmaster Armando Dippet for the job of Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher, but was refused. And during this visit, he talked to Helena's ghost to learn where she stashed the diadem, and that led him to Albania Albania, where he found it and killed an Albanian peasant to turn the diadem into his 5th Horcrux after the diary, the ring, the locket, and Hufflepuff's cup. Years later, when a deformed Tom Riddle returned to Hogwarts in 1969 to ask new headmaster Albus Dumbledore for the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher position and was refused again, Tom Riddle hid the diadem in the Room of Requirements, Room of Hidden Things, assuming that he was the only student who ever was or would ever be clever enough to discover the room and how it worked. So right after this in the book, Harry runs into Hagrid and sees a blasted face of a stone gargoyle that reminds him of the bust with the tiara on it that he saw in the Half-Blood Prince book that he used to mark the spot of the Advanced Potions textbook and the Room of Hidden Things, and presto, diadem, I know where it is. Here, it's kind of just like a rushed conversation that never really mentions the Bloody Baron, as Helena expresses disgust with how Tom Riddle manipulated her and defiled the diadem with dark magic, and she teases this.
In the place where everything is hidden, if you have to ask, you'll never know. If you know, you need only ask.
It evokes Dumbledore's "help will always be given at Hogwarts to those who ask for it." So Voldemort's forces begin the barrage. Pius Thicknees asks Voldemort if they should wait, and Voldemort ignores him. So why did Pius ask that? It's not clear. I'm wondering if he might have some young relatives who attend the school. Aberforth was right, should have taken him hostage. Kingsley and Lupin arm one side of the castle, joined by Arthur, Fred, and George.
You okay, Freddy? Yeah. Me too.
This might be among the last things the twin brothers will say to each other. George's ear is a bit deformed after Snape's Sectum Sempra from the aerial battle in Deathly Hallows Part 1. Ron opens the Chamber of Secrets by speaking Parseltongue. In the book, he later relates to Harry that he just tried to reproduce the sound Harry made when he opened the locket in the Forest of Dean and got it after a few tries. The movie justifies it this way.
Harry talks in his sleep. Have you noticed?
No, of course not.
I guess it is a better line than what was in the book, but in both cases, it's a shortcut to justify Harry not needing to join them on their side quest. The only downside here is that it brings back up the Deathly Hallows Part 1 love triangle drama among the trio. At least now, Ron seems to have moved on. Ron yanks one of the fangs out of the basilisk's skull and hands it to Hermione to destroy the cup. Why does he make her do it? Well, maybe he's afraid to face another Horcrux, or for Hermione to see those same spooky naked sex puppets of herself with Harry, or maybe after everything Hermione has sacrificed, he wants her to have a role in killing one of the chunks of Voldy. Either way, it's pretty neat that it works out that each Horcrux is destroyed by a different person, and they are destroyed in the exact order in which they were created. The first Horcrux made, the diary, was destroyed by Harry first in 1992. The second Horcrux made, the ring, was destroyed by Dumbledore in 1995. The third Horcrux made, the locket, was destroyed by Ron in the Forest of Dean. The fourth Horcrux made, the cup, was destroyed by Hermione here during the Battle of Hogwarts. The fifth Horcrux made, the diadem, was destroyed right after this by Fiendfyre, cast by Crabbe in the book, but by Goyle in the film. Also, in the movie, the diadem was additionally stabbed by Harry. The sixth Horcrux made, Harry himself, was destroyed by Voldemort in the Forbidden Forest right after this. And then the seventh Horcrux made, Nagini, was the last of them destroyed by Neville with the Sword of Gryffindor. Now, when Hermione stabs the cup, the waters of the Chamber of Secrets rage and form Voldemort's angry face, just kind of drenching them. The worst thing that happens to them is they go on a flume ride, but the rush of this leads them to kiss. In the book, the kiss is sparked by Ron suddenly realizing that they need to warn the house elves to flee the castle, and Hermione is so moved that he finally cares about the elves. Now, why doesn't the cup Horcrux put up more of a fight after the locket was such a pain in the ass? I think as more pieces of Voldemort's soul get destroyed, the remaining pieces struggle to bear the collective burden. Voldemort feels the cup's destruction, and so does Harry, as one of those pieces now forced to carry on more of that burden. There is a special frustration I have for trying to cancel subscriptions. I recently had to cancel a Hulu subscription I had forgotten about, and it took a full hour of my afternoon to take care of. But if I had used Rocket Money, that subscription would be canceled and I'd have an hour of my life back. Rocket Money is an all-in-one personal finance app that helps you cancel subscriptions, lower bills, and manage your money better. After you connect to your bank account, Rocket Money identifies all of your subscriptions, and then it's super easy to select the ones you don't want anymore. From there, Rocket Money may be able to help you cancel with just a few taps. Plus, Rocket Money will scan your bills and help you find lower rates wherever possible. You can take the money you save and use Rocket Money to create a customized budget in seconds. The app shows you where your money is going at all times and identifies top spending categories with insights on how you can stay within your budget better. Rocket Money will even notify you about upcoming charges or when your balance is low to help you avoid overdrafts and late fees. There's never a good reason not to save money. To try Rocket Money out today and unlock more features with premium, head to rocketmoney.com/newrockstars Rockstars or click the link in the video description. Enraged, Voldemort blasts the Elder Wand at the defensive dome, bringing it down. Now we get this macroscopic close-up showing the Elder Wand beginning to crack. A quick shot of Voldemort's bald head here also makes it look more veiny and weakened. Lupin and Tonks reach for one another, but their fingers never meet. A deleted scene shows Tonks arriving to this battle ready to fight next to her husband.
You shouldn't have! It's Teddy who needs you.
He'll sleep till dawn and snore like his father. It's you that needs me tonight.
With the barrier down, Scabbier, the Snatcher, leads a charge to chase Neville down the wooden bridge, but Neville ignites the charges to bring the whole thing down. To shoot this, they actually had Matthew Lewis running on a practical hydraulic bridge. A sweeping shot toward the viaduct bridge shows giants charging with the Death Eaters. Some get taken down by roots, which were likely Professor Sprout's doing. Many of the horrors of this battle recall the earlier threats Harry and the others faced. Giants recalling the Troll and Philosopher's Stone, the giant spiders returning from Chamber of Secrets, the Dementors from Prisoner of Azkaban, all leading to a reunion with Harry's duel with Voldemort from Goblet of Fire. Soaring Death Eaters breach the viaduct courtyard past McGonagall, who orders a retreat, and we follow one Death Eater from the outside to the inside of a tower where he Avada Kedavra's one Auror, but his next curse is met immediately by Arthur Weasley. And in the same shot, Kingsley hits one Death Eater with, I assume, impedimentia, and then swats him back out the window. I love this shot. I assume the filmmakers were aiming for like a Helm's Deep style siege, and shots like this, gliding from one area to another, giving some scenic geography and allowing singular characters some hero moments, is really what stitches great battle sequences and films together. Harry protects fleeing students by hitting a flying Death Eater with Stupefy, though we should note, even at this stage of the battle in the book, a lot of kids, a lot of teachers, a lot of Aurors start to die. Neville, drunk on battle, seeks Luna, saying he's crazy about her. This is another romance created for the films. In the books, Neville goes on to marry Hufflepuff, Anna Abbott, and Luna marries Rolf Scamander, grandson of Newt Scamander. Rowling has said that in the movie world, Neville and Luna probably had like a summer fling and then realized that they weren't a good couple because he's a bit too down to earth for her and she's a bit too kooky for him. Draco apparates in and grabs Goyle and Zabini. Zabini replaces Crabbe, who's part of the sequence in the book. Draco was able to apparate in because now that the magical protections around Hogwarts have fallen, anything goes. Harry runs through the collapsing Hall of Hexes on the 7th floor to find the Room of Requirement. Ron and Hermione see Harry vanish on the Mordor's map because, as we saw in Half-Blood Prince, the map doesn't show the Room of Requirement since Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs likely didn't know the room existed. Draco, who spent most of the previous year going in and out of this room, knows how to access it. Inside, we see the giant knight chess piece that Ron rode in Philosopher's Stone. We actually saw the Queen chess piece in Half-Blood Prince, and it actually returns a little bit later in this scene. A devil's snare plant bends down toward Harry. This is the plant that they had to fight through before the chess game in Philosopher's Stone. We see a Cornish pixie returning from Chamber of Secrets, as well as a statue of the first headmaster of Hogwarts, as well as the lights from Slughorn's Christmas party, a trophy cabinet, the winged skeleton from the Defense Against the Dark Arts classroom, Trelawney's teacups, and the boar statues from the diary flashback and Chamber of Secrets. Instead of the book's connection of Harry remembering the bust with the tiara from Half-Blood Prince, here he again just hears the tone and the parcel tongue to find the diadem in a box. This diadem itself has the Ravenclaw eagle holding a sapphire with diamonds embedded in the wings, and Ravenclaw's motto, "Wit beyond measure is man's greatest treasure," carved into the metal. Draco catches Harry, just wanting his wand back. Hermione disarms Draco, and Goyle fires a freaking Avada Kedavra at her. And this overhead shot shows that killing curse fly toward her and Ron, but when you go frame by frame, the green glow just kind of disappears. Thank God. I think they just included that to justify the horrific way Goyle is about to die. Hermione fires Stupefy, sending the diadem flying. Meanwhile, Goyle ignites Fiendfyre, but loses control of it. In the book, it's Crabbe who starts the fire. Fiendfyre is a curse that unleashes an unquenchable, sentient, seeming fire that doesn't rest until it consumes everything in its path, even though Harry seems to be able to use Aguamente on it here. But by that logic, this would be another thing, along with basilisk venom, that can destroy a Horcrux. The filmmakers wanted the Fiendfyre to move like a wave of water, and every time it crashes, it takes on the appearance of a different creature. We see a basilisk, a dragon, and a lion. Goyle dies in this fire. Whoa! But Harry and the others hop on brooms and save Draco and Zabini. This is actually the only film where we see Hermione riding a broom. Harry stabs the diadem with a basilisk fang, tossed to him by Hermione, and it releases angry smoke. And Ron scores an unnecessary Ronaldo goal! duel into the Fiendfyre. Why does Ron kick it? As far as he knows, they're gonna have to wait for that fire to die down and sort through the ashes to make sure the diadem is really destroyed. They added the Fang to avoid having to explain Fiendfyre as a possible destroyer of Horcruxes, and it does set up this rather silly showdown later with Nagini, where they have to stalk her with basilisk fangs like they're hunting a vampire with a wooden stake. But like the angry Voldemort face in the water in the Chamber of Secrets, now we get 3 angry Voldemort faces in the fire. In the same way the Room of Requirement can procure your need at its entrance, it produces their need here by trapping the Fiendfyre on the other side of these doors. And the moment this happens, Harry looks shaken, and even Nagini curls up defensively as if all the remaining pieces of Voldemort's soul feel that sting. We actually see sweat on Voldemort's face, and Pius Thicknesse only says, "My lord," before Voldemort hits him with the killing curse. Voldemort disapparates with Nagini, and from that, Harry realizes that Nagini must be the final Horcrux. The way Emma Watson plays this, she can see the physical pain that Harry is in, and his snake-like head twitch that he did in Order of the Phoenix, and I think she non-verbally surmises that Harry might be another Horcrux himself. Harry uses his link with Voldemort to see that he is in the boathouse with Lucius. In the book, they're in the Shrieking Shack, but the production had the boathouse built so that viewers would be very aware of the battle raging outside with the reflections of the fire and the explosions on the glass walls and in the water. Next, we see Oliver Wood gliding over the battle with the other Quidditch alums that I talked about before, and he flies toward a giant who's using a broken bit of a Quidditch goalpost keep as a weapon. Remember, we saw the Quidditch pitch burning before. Some giant went through there and he's like, "Hey, I can use this." And I like how this means Wood is always kind of a keeper, even after the pitch is gone. The trio runs down the stairs. Harry fires Incarcerous chains at a Death Eater chasing a Hogwarts student. Harry also deflects a stun from another Death Eater, while Ron hits him with perhaps Reducto? Outside, the trio gets lucky when it looks like a Stupefy blast from the right intercepts a second Stupefy blast from the left that was headed straight for them. They dodge the swipe from the giant using that broken Quidditch keep by hiding behind a bell that would have been from the collapsing bell tower that we saw in a previous exterior shot. They flee Aragog's giant spider offspring that have now sided with Voldemort since Aragog's death. In the book, Hagrid runs toward them, begging people not to hurt them, but the spiders swarm him, and Harry worries that Hagrid is dead as he sees Hagrid's hand disappearing beneath a slew of furry spider legs. They see Fenrir feasting on Lavender Brown. Hermione blasts him away. In the book, Lavender falls from a balcony and then gets attacked by Fenrir, and Hermione defends her while Trelawney drops a crystal ball on Fenrir's head, and Lavender is described as feebly stirring, but later is believed to die from her injuries. Aberforth stands beside Kingsley with a group including Ginny, Katie Bell, I think Padma, Leanne, Romilda, and Seamus, and Aberforth blasts a powerful Patronus to clear the Viaduct Bridge of Dementors. His Patronus is, again, a goat. And in terms of range, this is the goat of Patronuses. Also joining the fray in the book are everybody. The Centaurs, who shoot arrows at the Death Eaters, the Thestrals claw at the eyes of the giants, the House Elves even come out of the kitchen with kitchen knives, led by Creature, who, with Regulus's locket around his neck, shouts, "Fight! Fight! Fight for my master, defender of House Elves! Fight the Dark Lord in the name of brave Regulus! Fight!" Neville Longbottom's grandmother, Augusta, also arrives to fight alongside everyone. Voldemort, meanwhile, questions Snape in the boathouse about the Elder Wand.
It answers to you, and you only.
Does it?
My lord.
My lord is what Lucius asked in Deathly Hallows Part 1 when Voldemort mocked him in the manor.
My lord.
And of course, it's what Pius said to Voldemort right before he got offed. So Snape senses he's in danger. Voldemort thinks the Elder Wand succession follows death, not disarmament.
You killed Dumbledore, Sevrus. While you live, the Elder Wand cannot truly be mine.
And Voldemort slits Snape's throat, either with a nonverbal defendo or, more poetically, an itty-bitty sectum sempra. He orders Nagini to kill, which I find interesting because Nagini contains a piece of his soul, so maybe Voldemort did this as some insurance, thinking if his physical body were maimed somehow, the Elder Wand ownership might still pass to him via Nagini. But I don't know, since Harry is also a Horcrux, it's not like Harry's Elder Wand claim extends to Voldemort. I just don't know why he has Nagini do it. I think Nagini is kind of like a wand for him. Again, Voldemort just doesn't get wand lore. Snape bleeds out, and Harry, who still, as of now, thinks Snape murdered Dumbledore in cold blood, pities the man and holds his wound. Snape looks into Harry's eyes, Lily's eyes, and smiles faintly as he continues to cry. In his tears, Harry sees some pensive memories. In the book, the pensive goo gushes out of Snape's eyes and his ears and his neck, but here they're just simple teardrops, and he orders,
"Take them to the pensive."
He pronounces it pensive with the frau French pronunciation. Alan Rickman gives an incredible performance as Severus Snape, and he actually knew Snape's real story before anyone else involved with the films were told. J.K. Rowling reportedly told Alan Rickman right after he was cast, and he told the directors to defer to him on his performance as he knew stuff they didn't and he just couldn't tell them. As we hear Lily's theme again, Snape says,
You have your mother's eyes.
His final words in the book are simply, "Look at me." But the film scene ends with Snape implying he always felt some affection for Harry, and then, in a Snape-like, he turns away and fades. Voldemort now whispers inside everyone's heads a 1-hour ceasefire to deal with their dead and for Harry to surrender or Voldemort will kill everyone. During this message, we see George Weasley get disarmed by a female Death Eater and scramble to regain his wand. This is not Fred because this twin's ear is damaged and he's wearing a purple jacket. Fred, earlier we saw, was wearing green. The trio returns to the Great Hall and it's bad. There's a long blood swipe on the floor from the wounded being dragged inside. Slughorn is patching up a wound on Filch's arm with essence of dittany. Padma Patil sits with Professor Trelawney, her favorite teacher, as they cover up a dead body that's believed to be Lavender's, but there is a set photo showing a body that doesn't look like Lavender. Now, a bit of behind the scenes drama here. Emma Thompson had a beef with Helena Bonham Carter. Emma Thompson was married to Gilderoy Lockhart actor Kenneth Branagh, who cheated on Emma Thompson with Helena Bonham Carter when Kenneth and Helena were starring in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein together. Yeah, with Emma Thompson, it's kind of a Love Actually scenario, right? Thompson and Branagh later divorced, and Thompson insisted that she would only come back to film scenes in this movie if she was never on set the same day as Helena Bonham Carter. I'm telling you, there's like 18 great British actors and they all f***. The Weasley family gathers around the body of Fred. Oh God. In the book, Fred was killed in an explosion outside the Room of Requirement that was caused by Augustus Rookwood as Fred was joking with his recently reunited brother Percy. Afterward, Percy threw himself on Fred's body to shield it from further harm and then takes off after Rookwood, and we see Percy Weasley standing with the family here in this shot. It is tragic to see family Weasley mourn. Harry also sees that Lupin and Tonks are both dead. Oh my God. Their fingers are just centimeters apart, just as they were in their final shot when they were alive in this film. Rowling later revealed it was Bellatrix and Dolohov being the Death Eater that Harry spared in the cafe in Deathly Hallows Part 1. Those were the two who killed Lupin and Tonks. Now in the book, a lot of these heartbreaks come after Harry sees Snape's history in the Pensieve as he marches to his death under the invisibility cloak in chapter 34, The Forest Again. Another heartbreak from the book, little Colin Creevey, his body being carried by Oliver Wood over his shoulder, and Rowling described Colin as, quote, "He was tiny in death," and reading that completely broke me. Harry pours Snape's memories in the Pensieve in the headmaster's office and dives in. The first memory we see shows Lily and Petunia Evans in a field in their Cokeworth suburb. Petunia calls her sister a freak, which echoes what Petunia said of her in the first film.
I was the only one to see her for what she was.
Lily makes a flower bloom here, recalling the gift of a falling lily petal that turned into a fish named Francis that she gave to Slughorn. Young Severus climbs out of this tree and defends her. We see them lying beneath a weeping willow. The charmed leaves transition into Lily's sorting into Gryffindor by McGonagall, who looks exactly the same age. And the moment Lily meets young James Potter and young Sirius Black. Now there was another memory before this one in the book where young James overhears young Severus telling Lily that he hopes she's in Slytherin, and James makes a comment to Sirius about how Slytherin sucks. After this, he gives Severus the nickname of Snivellus, and Lily dislikes James right off the bat. And Severus wasn't doing anything rude or mean in this moment. He was just talking to his friend and hoping that she got put in the same house as him. So we see how Snape's memory sees James as just like a popular, spoiled, rich, well-off asshole. In the next memory, young Severus, carrying a stack of books way too high for any first year, at least one not named Hermione Granger, gets bumped by James, who also knocks over Lily's books. Severus helps Lily pick up her like 2 books, but you know there's a whole mess of books on the floor that no one helps Severus pick up, and we hear Harry's line of "Don't say a word against my father" echoing back from Order of the Phoenix as Lily and James notice each other for the first time, and Lily's like, "I like me a bad boy," and we transition directly into the photo of older Lily and James dancing by the fountain that Harry got from Hagrid's photo album that was later framed in his bedside in Prisoner of Azkaban. Next we see Trelawney's prophecy about Voldemort and the boy whom he will mark as his equal. Snape overhears just part of this and tells Voldemort, who plans to target the Potters, which leads Snape to Dumbledore to beg for help. We see a memory added to the film, Snape's point of view of the debris-covered hallway of the Potter's house in Godric's Hollow, and we also see Lily's final words to baby Harry.
Mama loves you. Dada loves you.
Now, Snape would not have witnessed any of this. He was not in Godric's Hollow, but this movie montage just kind of gives us some, objective context to what happened. We also see Wormtail, the friend James Potter mistakenly trusted with a Fidelius charm instead of Sirius Black. And then this moment with Snape and Dumbledore in what looks like the lower level of the astronomy tower. There is a telescope there. This would be the same tower where Snape will eventually kill Albus. Dumbledore tells Snape that Harry has Lily's eyes, and Snape agrees to help the kid so long as no one ever knows. We flash through some iconic memories from the first film, Harry's sword sorting into Gryffindor, now looking just like Lily's and James's sortings did. We hear some shit-talking Snape did on Harry at the time.
He possesses no measurable talent. His arrogance rivals even that of his father, and he seems to relish his fame.
We also flash back to Snape calling James Potter swine as he was teaching Harry occlumency in Order of the Phoenix, and we see a flash of a new point of view shot stepping over James's barefoot corpse at the top of the stairs in Godric's Hollow. Then we see the Marvolo Gaunt ring, the moment Dumbledore put it on his finger and got cursed, and Snape's effort to contain that curse, but giving Albus less than a year to live in the summer before Harry's 6th year. We learn that Dumbledore ordered Snape to enter into the unbreakable vow to help Draco kill him to earn Voldemort's ultimate trust, and to make Dumbledore's inevitable death matter the most. Dumbledore then tells Snape that when Voldemort is at his most vulnerable, he must tell Harry that when Voldemort killed his mother Lily, he accidentally turned baby Harry into a Horcrux. Dumbledore came to this conclusion after the events of Order of the Phoenix, specifically seeing Harry's link with Voldemort in that film.
Oh, thank goodness. Next we need...
Look at me!
But Dumbledore at this moment thought the only Horcruxes were the diary, the ring, the locket, and then this accidental one of Harry. He didn't realize Tom Riddle had made 7 of them. He wouldn't learn that later until he got Slughorn's complete memory. In this conversation, he just assumed most of the Horcruxes would either be destroyed or at least found before he died and things got to Harry. Snape realizes,
So when the time comes, the boy must die?
Yes.
Snape says Dumbledore has only been keeping Harry alive, raising him like a pig to the slaughter. This moment gets more context in the book here and in King's Cross later in this film. Dumbledore knows, or at least suspects very strongly, that Harry cannot die as long as a piece of Voldemort's soul lives inside the kid. But he cannot tell Harry or Snape this in case Voldemort were to find out, and Harry needs to go to his death willingly without assuming he'll survive. We see Snape holding Lily's corpse while baby Harry cries in the crib in the background. Again, this did not happen in the chronology of the book. Snape was not in Godric's Hollow on that night, but the film added this, I suppose, to replace the detail from the book of Snape having gone to Grimmauld Place after Dumbledore's death to retrieve part of a photo of Lily in the bottom part of her letter to Sirius. Snape shows Dumbledore that his Patronus is a doe, Lily's Patronus, and we learn that it was Snape who sent Gryffindor's sword to Harry in the Forest of Dean. Dumbledore gasps.
Lily? After all this time?
Always.
Later, Lily will echo this sentiment to Harry.
Stay close to me.
Always.
So Harry is shaken, likely recalling all the time Snape was actually protecting him, trying to stop Quirrell and Philosopher's Stone, forcing Harry behind him and facing Werewolf Lupin in his stead and Prisoner of Azkaban. Snape's no idea. And Order of the Phoenix, followed by Snape actually alerting the Order about Harry's concerns and keeping the true sword of Gryffindor and having a fake sent to Bellatrix's vault. Harry tells Hermione,
There's a reason I can hear them. The Horcruxes. I think I've known for a while. And I think you have too.
I'll go with you.
Oof. Hermione, the smartest of the three, deduced a while ago that Harry was likely a Horcrux himself, but just didn't want to say it out loud. Now, this part of the book is really just the most heart-wrenching prose I think Rowling had written. Chapter 43, The Forest Again. So, in the book, in addition to seeing all the corpses of his friends who have fallen in the battle, Harry Irish goodbyes Ron and Hermione and Ginny by going full Ignotus Peverell under the invisibility cloak. He only really talks to Neville, not Ron and Hermione, telling Neville to kill the snake, assuming that Ron and Hermione might die before they get the chance. In the book, Harry passes Hagrid's hut and recalls the warm memories that now just make him want to cling to life, including helping Hagrid with Norbert and Philosopher's Stone. And then he reaches the tree line and he sees Dementors and he has no strength for a Patronus. Rowling writes, he could no longer control his own trembling. It was not, after all, so easy to die. Every second he breathed, the smell of the grass, the cool air on his face was so precious. To think that people had years and years, time to waste, so much time it dragged, and he was clinging to each second. At the same time, he thought that he would not be able to go on, and he knew that he must. The long game was ended. The snitch had been caught. It was time to leave the air, and that is what inspires Harry to remember the snitch, and I open at the close. In the book, Harry says, I'm going to die to open the snitch upon kissing it. Here, he says, I'm ready to die. And upon his kiss, the snitch opens and the resurrection stone floats into his hand. Now, at this moment, all 3 of the Deathly Hallows technically belong to Harry Potter. The invisibility cloak, the resurrection stone, and the Elder Wand, technically, which is in Voldemort's possession, but it is loyal to Harry. In the book, Harry turns the stone over 3 times in his hand, and his loved ones appear. His father, James, his mother, Lily, his godfather, Sirius, and their friend, Remus. And they are more alive than ghosts, but less alive than living souls. Now, the VFX designers made them less translucent than, like, the the Gray Lady or Nearly Headless Nick, but Harry is cast in the same bluish-green color. As in the book, Harry now feels like he has more in common with the dead around him than the living back in the castle. But really, my favorite line from chapter 34 is when Harry realizes the true purpose of the Resurrection Stone. Quote, he was not really fetching them, they were fetching him. And what I love about the edit here is that we don't see the four of them like fade in. We just see Harry in close-up and then cut to his point of view and boom, they are already standing there. Almost as if to say they were always there. They never left, as they will not leave Harry even after he can no longer see them. Harry asks Sirius,
does it hurt, dying?
Quicker than falling asleep.
It's interesting for Sirius to say, considering he was hit with Avada Kedavra from Bellatrix and had several seconds to look back at Harry and then drift through the veil. Harry asks Remus about his son Teddy.
Others will tell him what his mother and father died for. One day, he'll understand.
Teddy will go on to be raised by his grandmother Andromeda, and Harry will be his godfather. When Harry drops the Resurrection Stone, their forms disappear, but he doesn't need it to know that they are there. And that, I believe, is what Deathly Hallows teaches us the most about death. It's not meant to be mastered, it's meant to be welcomed as an equal. It's not a separation from anything, it's a reunion with something that we have missed. It's a homecoming with what we love. So Harry presents himself without his wand in his hand to Voldemort, who gives the mic drop line from the trailer.
Harry Potter, the boy who lived, come to die.
Like every other Horcrux, we hear the screech that only ends when Harry closes his eyes. Ray Fiennes, you really knew the assignment. And I just noticed that behind his green killing curse, Bellatrix ducks with excitement. So Harry awakens without his glasses on and without his scar on his forehead in this white void, which he and Dumbledore later identify as King's Cross Station. That was the place that took Harry away from his old life. He sees this hideous mewling bebe, a bit of Voldemort's soul that was just destroyed, really just like 1/8 of a Voldemort soul. It looks just like the form of Voldemort that was dropped in the cauldron back in the Little Hangleton Cemetery in the Goblet of Fire. It's actually fun to rewatch this scene and realize that Dumbledore takes Harry on this walk down the platform just really to find another bench to sit on that didn't have a bloody Voldababy under it. So in chapter 35 of the book, this scene lasts really just long enough for that wretched creature to finally gasp its final breaths, as Harry is in a sort of limbo state, as in his mind he is watching the piece of Voldemort's soul that had been living in him finally expire. It's something that would be instantaneous back in the physical world, but for Harry, time dilates out. And also the fact that this is set in a representation of a train station is meant to metaphorically represent Harry's option to join it in death, and that's what the approaching train in the distance is meant to convey. Now the book included Dumbledore explaining that Voldemort, using Harry's blood to rebuild his body back in Goblet of Fire, extended Lily's protection charm on them both, so Harry's able to cling to life while Voldemort continues to live, and that Voldemort's killing curse from the Elder Wand did destroy the Horcrux part of Harry, but that Harry did not die. That's why Harry needed to welcome death and not defend himself for this to work, because that Horcrux needed to be extracted from him. This chapter is really the all questions answered chapter. Like, we get answers to why in the aerial flight on the way from Privet Drive to the Burrow, Voldemort was not able to kill Harry. We get answers about the Deathly Hallows and Gellert Grindelwald and Harry's connection to Ignotus Peverell. But here, it's a much shorter scene that just kind of calls back some things from earlier films, like Dumbledore recalls his "help will always be given at Hogwarts" line from Chamber of Secrets, but he amends it here.
Help will always be given at Hogwarts to those who deserve it.
Which sets up Neville about to pull the sword from the hat in a few moments, and Harry asks this line that's so great from the book.
Is this all real, or is it just happening inside my head?
Of course it's happening inside your head, Harry. Why should that mean that it's not real?
So we come out of that vision on Voldemort's eye as he's laying on the ground, and that should not have happened from casting a killing curse, so he knows something is wrong here. He's feeling 1/3 weaker. He did not expect that, since he thought the only other part of him anywhere else would be a Nagini. He did not know that Harry was a Horcrux, and he just made a huge mistake. Narcissa Malfoy checks Harry and realizes the kid is still alive, asks if Draco is still alive, and she goes along with the ruse. Now in the book, Voldemort crucios what he thinks is Harry's corpse and thrashes it around, but Harry, interestingly, doesn't feel the pain. Meanwhile, Neville picks up the dusty sorting hat, and we hear the sword appear in a light, barely reflecting off the blade glimmering on his face. Hagrid carries Harry down the viaduct bridge, and I love how Voldemort just kind of casually magics the body of a dead giant off the bridge out of the way. Lucius beckons Draco over to their side, and Draco only responds to "Mama," leading to this hilariously limp hug.
Well done, Draco. Well done.
So according to Tom Felton, Ray Fiennes improvised this hug, and it's really just all in the angle. Like, don't hug people at like this awkward 2 o'clock angle while you still have something in your hand. But I love this gesture because it shows how clearly no one has ever hugged Tom Riddle, and Dean Thomas has never looked so disturbed. As in the book, Neville and several others refuse to stop fighting just because Harry is dead. It's one of my favorite things about Deathly Hallows. It's not all on one person to save the world. It takes a village to bring down Voldemort, and even if Harry dies, there's still a chance they could defeat him. Like, even the owner of the Elder Wand could still have his throat slit in his sleep. And really, it's just a great turn that shows that Neville Longbottom truly could have lived up to the status of the Chosen One had Voldemort marked him instead of Harry Potter. Now, instead of the book's grotesque sorting hat ceremony to like resort Neville into Slytherin, leading to the sorting hat lighting on fire on his head, the film gives us just this epic Braveheart speech from Neville that ends in him pulling the sword from the hat, and Harry chooses that moment to spring to life and reveal himself, which scares the shit out of Voldemort. Harry fires Incendio at Nagini, which ricochets and burns the eyebrows off a few Death Eaters in the background. Harry probably knows this won't work. They try to do it on the locket, but he probably just wants to distract the snake to give Neville an opening. Now, here in the book is where the second wave of the centaurs and Grop and Thestrals and house elves with their knives that I mentioned before comes in, and it's such a great moment. But in this scene, we get a very satisfying visual of suddenly faithless Death Eaters disapparating out of there. Kingsley casts Protego shields in front of the Great Hall doors, but Voldemort is able to blast through it to launch Neville off his feet, and it hurts to point this out, but several Hogwarts students have died in this assault. You can see the Death Eaters marching over at least one uniformed corpse as they charge here. Now, the film gives a much bigger duel between Harry and Voldemort. The initial volley on the stairs is a sequence of green killing curses that Harry shouldn't have been able to block with Protego, but you know, it's now kind of like just a video game. When Voldemort fires a steady green stream at Harry, Harry's red counter curse is assumed to be Expelliarmus, matching the cinematic stream crossing from Goblet of Fire. Nagini slithers up to Harry from behind, but honestly, that's kind of what he wants. Like, even if Nagini were to fatally bite him, if Harry would be able to stab it with a basilisk fang in that tussle, then all he would need is for someone else to hopefully be able to disarm Voldemort when that guy's not paying attention, or just, you know, again, cut his throat while he's resting. Like, he's still gonna get tired. Voldemort, desperate to kill Harry by any means necessary, he stops using killing curses, and he resorts to just straight up attacks, like using his robes in a kind of incarcerous strangle, and then at one point just slapping Harry around. But it makes sense. He's frustrated. Nothing will kill this kid. Meanwhile, in the Great Hall, Bellatrix attacks Ginny, and Molly brings the house down.
Not my daughter, you bitch!
Yeah, it's this movie's version of
Get away from my godson.
And also,
get away from her, you bitch!
Bellatrix initially underestimates Molly. Like, Molly has just lost her son Fred to Rookwood, and in the past, she lost her brothers Gideon and Fabian Pruitt to Dolohov, and she is not about to lose another kid, so Molly volleys back with this interesting combination. Boom! I'm gonna get your dust all over this dinner table. So many have asked in the movie, what curse exactly did Molly use to kill Bellatrix Lestrange? In the book, the curse is not named. We just get this passage. Molly's curse soared beneath Bellatrix's outstretched arm and hit her squarely in the chest, directly over her heart. It's assumed that that curse was Avada Kedavra, but here in the film, it's not Avada Kedavra. It looks like a combination of like Petrificus Totalis, which would freeze Bellatrix the way Neville got frozen stiff in Philosopher's Stone, followed by maybe Reducto, which would be the spell Molly's daughter Ginny seems to be very good at. Reducto had the same explosive, ashy disintegration on the Room of Requirement dummy that this spell has on Bellatrix. But the issue is Molly's spell is red here, and Ginny and Hermione's Reductos that we've seen were always blue. There are also some theories that Molly might have used what's called ancient magic, which is explored more in the Hogwarts Legacy game. I just think in the final battle, they might have been using some Star Wars plasma cannon color coding with like the X-Wing's good guy red blasts versus the Death Star's evil green turbo lasers. But either way, like with Voldemort, I think they wanted to show something just being erased from existence and their gross ash getting everywhere, as opposed to, you know, just a straight up dead body. Meanwhile, Harry schools Voldemort on Elder Wand succession, which is really the bulk of their confrontation after Harry drops out of Hagrid's arms in the book, as they just verbally spar with each other in the Great Hall before their final confrontation. But this film just really wants to milk the cinematic value here.
Come on, Tom. Let's finish this the way we started. Together.
Harry throws them both over the ledge, forcing Voldemort to apparate fly around Hogwarts, and meanwhile they pull at each other's faces, and at one point their faces just grotesquely blend together. Ugh. They tumble into the viaduct courtyard, surrounded by bodies from both sides. They don't say their spells here, but Voldemort must be firing Avada Kedavra while Harry is again using Expelliarmus that just takes a red laser form. And really, to get the most out of this duel, the film delays Neville killing Nagini until this last moment. The cross-cutting editing does feel like Star Wars because they need multiple different people on multiple different fronts to do something synchronized and just hope that the other side has done their part of the task. It makes it really effective. And here we see agonized Voldemort faces appearing in the smoke of Nagini, and we hear his screams echoing. And I might be reaching here, I often do, but the 4 Horcruxes that get destroyed in this movie almost follow the same elemental pattern as Dumbledore's duel with Voldemort in the Ministry in Order of the Phoenix. The cup released angry water. The Diadem released angry fire. The Horcrux in Harry's head was killed in the mud and earth of the Forbidden Forest floor. And now Nagini dissipates into smoky air. We know how much that beautiful display of the 4 elements by Dumbledore in the Ministry enraged Voldemort by the fact of him saying earth. So some part of him now must hate seeing his life's work undone into the same natural elements. Voldemort knows his last Horcrux is gone, and Harry can see it on his face, so they cast their spell simultaneously. In the book, they each yell their spells at the same time. Avada Kedavra, Expelliarmus, as Harry will often choose a non-lethal path of disarming. And here the edit rapidly cuts back and forth between the two. So Harry Potter, as the rightful owner of the Elder Wand, uses Malfoy's wand to overpower the Elder Wand and ends his Expelliarmus with a little swish and flick that simply and elegantly flips the Elder Wand into the air back to his hand. Now, in the book, Harry does catch the Elder Wand high above his head like this. The Elder Wand cannot be used against its rightful owner, and so Voldemort's killing curse rebounded to kill himself, and the disarmament brought the Elder Wand back to Harry's hand. Voldemort is supposed to just kind of slump over dead, but in the film, Voldemort disintegrates. And we hear a bit of Lily's theme as these ashes waft into the morning sunrise. Visual effects artist Tim Burke said they intended the design to show what happens when a killing curse enters into the body and breaks it apart from the inside out. Like Voldemort's physical attributes just kind of come undone as he's reduced to ash. I think in 2011, the filmmakers might have felt that audiences needed to see a semi-immortal creep kind of wither into ash, like an Indiana Jones villain, to accept his death. But really, since we've seen Voldemort turn into a fart cloud before and then come back in a physical form, I believe now, looking back, nothing truly is as final as just a limp corpse. Like on some level now, based off of this, we might be worried where all those ashes are gonna settle and whether Filch might be inhaling bits of Voldemort dust when he's sweeping up. So in the aftermath, Neville and Luna sit together, and Neville can delight in being the one to really provide the crucial victory at the right moment. And it was finally he who tortured Voldemort to the point of insanity. Harry sees the Weasleys, Molly and Ginny just kind of has this 1,000-yard stare, which is justified for someone who just went through battle, but again, conveys none of the chemistry that should exist between Harry and Ginny. And we see George and Arthur and Percy chatting. Next, we see Cho Chang, Katie Bell, Leanne, and Padma Patil. And Harry has a warmer moment with Cho than he has with Ginny, which is criminal. I'm at the point now of saying that these movies hate the character of Ginny Weasley. In the book, the thought of Ginny's kiss was what was on Harry's mind the moment Voldemort killed him in the forest. She is his forever person. Nothing against Cho Chang. She got a raw deal in Order of the Phoenix, but for this shot here to kind of just gloss over Ginny Weasley and then focus on a sweet smile from Cho is insane. Meanwhile, Dean, Thomas, and Seamus and Aberforth share war stories. And again, I want to see more of like Dean's side chats with people while Professor Sprout and Flitwick and Slughorn sit together. Hagrid gives Harry a big ol' hug. So out on the viaduct bridge, Harry explains why the Elder Wand answered to him. His theory after his conversation with Ollivander at the beginning of this movie was proven true. And then, like Katie Heron and Mean Girls with the tiara, plus Rose and Titanic with Heart of the Ocean, he snaps the wand into pieces and chucks it. And notice when he breaks it, it gives off a little spark. Rowling has said that the Elder Wand's core is made of a hair from a thestral tail, and I just think that's so cool. In the book, Harry actually uses the Elder Wand to repair his original wand, and he puts the Elder Wand back with Dumbledore in his tomb, so that if Harry were to die a natural death, no one will have taken the Elder Wand from him, and the Elder Wand would no longer have its special power. He does keep the invisibility cloak, and he just leaves the Resurrection Stone wherever it fell. Harry says that the Peverills were just talented wizards who created these things, and the tale of them belonging to death was just concocted to explain their power. But Harry's goal is to really just demythologize the Deathly Hallows so that no one will ever die for them again. So here we cut 19 years later to the film's epilogue at platform 9 3/4 at King's Cross. The characters are now around the ages of 36 to 37, which is the age the actors are now, making it very fun to compare the actors' appearance to the way this film thought they would age up. Rowling originally wrote this epilogue when she was still writing Philosopher's Stone, and she kept this chapter secret for years, making little changes here and there over the years. She wanted to provide some closure and end where the magic escape began for Harry. Ginny and Harry have 3 kids: James Sirius Potter, Albus Severus Potter, and Lily Luna Potter, who, like Ginny was when we first met her, not old enough yet to go to Hogwarts. In the background is Bill and Fleur's eldest daughter, Victoire Weasley. In the book, Teddy Lupin is also there, snogging her. I guess there is a deleted take where Teddy might have appeared behind Draco, played by Luke Newberry, but I don't know if this is confirmed. Draco is there with his wife, Astoria, with their kid, Scorpius. Astoria is played by Jade Gordon, Felton's real-life girlfriend at the time. In the book, he sees Harry and the others and gives them like a respectful little nod. Ron and Hermione's kids are Rose Granger Weasley and Hugo Granger Weasley. In the book, it's also revealed that Neville Longbottom is now the Hogwarts herbology professor. Now, the cursed child play follows Albus and Rose and Scorpius, starting on the train from this scene. The play establishes that Harry is head of magical law enforcement for the Ministry, Hermione is Minister of Magic, and Ron is co-managing Weasley's Wizarding Wheezes with George. Ginny played professional Quidditch for the Holyhead Harpies and is now the sports correspondent for the Daily Prophet. So they had to reshoot this final scene because the old age makeup looked rough the first go around. Like, you could look at pictures and they gave liver spots to adults in their mid-30s. What? This finished version that we see is a combination of visual and makeup effects, where Harry just has a big old forehead vein, Ginny's got a pretty bad wig, and Ron's just fat. Young Albus is worried that he will be sorted into Slytherin, but Harry tells him one of the best headmasters came from Slytherin and that the sorting hat takes one's choice into account. Albus joins James and Rose in a compartment as a chocolate frog jumps on the window, bringing us full circle. And one detail I do like about the scene, Harry's scar has mostly faded. As a nod to the final line of the book, the scar had not pained Harry for 19 years. All was well. So we might now be projecting like 19 years in the future for the 7th season of this upcoming HBO Harry Potter series, but let us now end with one final Room of Requirement section to discuss what this final season of this series is required to include. And I think one thing we've proven with this rewatch series is that while these David Heyman produced films from 2001 to 2011 were quite good, they are far from perfect, and it's really Rowling's books, not the films, that are the most beloved part of the IP that HBO can certainly improve upon. So here we're going to talk about changes to both Deathly Hallows Part 1 and Part 2. Because Requirement 1, the final season will benefit from having multiple episodes because Deathly Hallows did not need to be 2 films. They could have done it in a Return to the King style 3-hour epic, but Warner Brothers clearly got greedy. So there are lots of lore details in Deathly Hallows to cover, and 8 to 10 hour-long episodes will be perfect to dive into all of that lore. Requirement 2, further explore Dumbledore's history with Grindelwald and Aberforth and Ariana. The Deathly Hallows book is all about Dumbledore, and both of these movies don't really answer enough questions about him. And I'm not talking about what the Fantastic Beasts movies explored about Dumbledore's further adult years when he was played by Jude Law. I want to know about him as a teenager a lot more. Requirement 3, the Deathly Hallows backstory animation is incredible. And this might be a note really for the 6th season, but the Horcruxes need a similar visual guide for the viewer. These movies gloss over what each Horcrux is. The episodes of the final season need to be proper investigations and treasure hunts for each remaining Horcrux and Hallow. Requirement 4, let's lose the jealous lover Ron subplot from Part 1, and let's let Ginny Weasley be Harry's true star-crossed lover. Requirement 5, we gotta get that Dean Thomas, Ted Tonks, Dirk Cresswell subplot. I love those guys. And we also gotta get in there Potter Watch with Lee Jordan. And finally, Requirement 6, lose the epilogue. I'm sorry, but Rowling wrote that when she was a less talented writer, and I get it. As a parent, there is a certain joy in seeing your child cycle back through the rites of passage that you went through, but this whole scene is just contrived, it's overly sentimental, it's weirdly obsessed with middle names, and it's just not great. I think we need to end this with the trio looking up at Hogwarts after the battle. Other than that, everything else from these final two films, kudos to the filmmakers for capturing the spirit and the themes of Rowling's final book and improving on it in some cases. With the budget, design, and direction that went into the Battle of Hogwarts, it's gonna be tough for whatever the final season of the show is to top that climax. And that's why I think they should spend more of their runtime just focusing on the lore. And this concludes our Harry Potter rewatch series at New Rockstars, and with it, the year of 2024 on this channel. I want to thank everyone for watching us this year, and specifically with this rewatch series, the hard work of Gina Ippolito and all of our talented editors without whom this rewatch series would not be possible. So an announcement as we look ahead to 2025, New Rockstars just launched a channel membership where you can support this channel directly, and thank you to everyone who supported us so far. But starting now, we are unveiling an additional tier for a couple bucks more per month. You can get access to certain special New Rockstars videos early and completely ad-free. So that means no random product plugs in the middle of a video, no pop-up mid-roll ads, no creepy background ads next to my head, no plugs of anything at all, just the pure New Rockstars analysis and Easter eggs. And as of now, we already have some ad-free versions of our favorite videos from 2024 available exclusive to members at that tier. And we're gonna do this for our next rewatch series and other big videos that we can manage it for. Now, this will not change anything about New Rockstars' normal video output. Like if you don't want to or can't support New Rockstars as a member, that's totally okay. Like nothing's gonna change for you. You will still get all of the free versions of the videos we currently produce with ads at the normal upload time. And we are just grateful to anyone who even watches our videos. This is just something a little extra we wanted to give back to super fans willing to support us on another level. And finally, some bonus shout outs to Morgan Ross at Movie Flame and Jay and Ben Carlin at Super Carlin Brothers. Those channels are, in my opinion, the best Harry Potter YouTubers. Morgan has also broken down most of the Harry Potter films, and his breakdowns are totally worth watching. He finds and explains things that we don't get to in our videos, and he's much more of the lore expert. We only finished our series in 2 months because we just have a big team here that we've assembled over 8 years. But if you love Harry Potter, lore, and theories, those channels have you covered. I am not gonna be breaking down the Fantastic Beasts movies. I'm taking a break from Harry Potter for now. Comment down below with your thoughts. Follow me at EA Voss. Subscribe to all channels in the New Rockstars network for breakdowns and news coverage of everything you love, and consider supporting us as a member by hitting the join button. Thanks for watching. Mischief managed.